No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken, episode number 396, a very special edition as we finish our countdown of the 50 worst of 2025. So we are now into the top 10. There's a hell of a lot to get into this year, like Gary Neville showing their disdain towards our beautiful flag.
Funnily enough, on one of my development sites last week, there was a Union Jack flag put up, and I took it down instantly.
Talk TV host Mike Graham being sacked over a social media post he still claims he never posted.
People in the building who didn't want me to go, whereas there were also people in the building who did, for all sorts of reasons, you know, and maybe not this one. So it sort of, it ceased becoming about the post in the end, and it more became about how are we going to get out of this?
And Meghan and Harry horrifying the world as they released this vomit-inducing video.
Baby mama, she gon' put it on you. She gon' do that, baby mama. Drop it down.
I'm just going to say the words moon bump there, guys. But what other shocking moments are ahead? And what do you think will be the worst moment of 2025? We will reveal all with a fabulous superstar panel today. Two of our absolute favourites, Advance UK leader Ben Habib and Dominic Frisby. Comic genius, of course, but he also writes the investment newsletter Substack Friendly Flying Frisby, and I subscribe and you should too. Of course, we will be having no uncancelled after show today over on Substack. However, I'm very excited to say we do return live on Monday. That's when Greatest Britain and Union Jackass will be back too. But of course, all of our usual royal content still can be found on the Outspoken Substack, the address www.outspoken.live. But now, let's go. Kicking off the top 10 worst moments of 2025. And for me, this really was the incident that unfortunately caused me to split from Reform UK, a party that I had voted for at the last election and really still predict probably will end up being the UK's next government. But when they reported Rupert Lowe to the police, specifically this very shady chairman, Zia Youssef, who seems to have bought his way into power, and when they reported him to police for hurty words after Youssef falsely claimed that Rupert had threatened him with physical violence on at least 2 occasions, I was just done. I was done. Like, that goes against everything I thought this party was meant to believe in. So Rupert came on Outspoken for his first interview about what had gone down. Remember, at that point, the leadership of Reform UK had been briefing that he had dementia as well, to reveal what really happened. Watch. That you threatened to slit Zia Youssef's throat in that meeting.
Dan, that's not right. What I did say after Friday was that the party had just slit its own throat. That's what I said about the party. I haven't.
So you weren't making a threat to him.
I didn't say that to Zia, by the way. I said that to my staff, and I maintain that. I think this is a most mysterious and extraordinary decision that was made. And you know, so no, I haven't spoken to Zia or communicated with him, as far as I'm aware, since that day on December the 13th. And since then, as I say, I've been iced out of most of Reform's meetings, conferences. Indeed, one day I was doing an interview with Martin Daubney on GB News, and I arrived to do the interview, and I was told there was a Reform press conference taking place, so I couldn't do the interview. Well, I didn't even know. It's extraordinary.
Dominic Frisby and Ben Habib, great to have you in the studio. Happy New Year. Big 2026 ahead, I hope. Ben, it's funny to think in a way that this only went down this year. last year now. I've got to get used to that. Last year, because we're in 2026. But so much has happened. This was a real moment, I think, which really enforced the split on the right, which had already started when Nigel Farage said some truly unpleasant things about you following your departure from Reform UK, where, of course, you had been deputy leader.
Yeah, so, I was perhaps closer to Reform than most people and had experienced the transition of the way that the party was being governed from when Richard Tice, who recruited me into the party as deputy leader, and then when, the transition to Nigel Farage, which, by the way, also happened without any forewarning to the deputy leader, being me, in advance. I learned about Nigel Farage taking over as leader the day it happened. And I knew I was in for a rough ride because as deputy leader, Richard Tice and I had brokered a deal with a particular political party in Northern Ireland called the Traditional Unionist Voice. And within a week of having taken over as leader, Nigel Farage endorsed the opponents of our allies in Northern Ireland. So I knew we had a serious issue. And I'd campaigned, therefore, relentlessly, as you might remember, Dan, for the democratisation of Reform, because Reform now occupied this pivotal place in British politics. It had broken the two-party system, and it was critical in my mind that it now must cease to be an adolescent and grow up. And in order to grow up, you have to have democratic checks and balances within the party, so I campaigned for it. And I see major issues with Farage being Reform and Reform being Farage, but I hope that the democratisation of the party could put the party straight. I failed in that campaign. It was a vociferous campaign I fought in the late 2024. I failed in that campaign. And I think the sacking of Rupert Lowe in the way that he was sacked is classic of a political party that remains adolescent, that hasn't matured into a fully capable governing party. Farage is famous, as you know, Dan, for not tolerating great voices around him. Rupert Lowe had, a couple of months before that, been endorsed by Elon Musk. Farage had been labelled as weak sauce or something to that effect by Elon Musk. And I think that was intolerable for Farage. And then Rupert Lowe did an interview with Andrew Pearce of the Daily Mail, in which he likened Farage to the Messiah, which you would have thought Nigel might have liked, but
maybe too close to the truth.
Too close to the truth, and that resulted in Rupert Lowe being sacked. And for me, if I may be personal for a moment,
please.
For me, it's been a life-changing moment because at that point, even though I'd seen all the weaknesses in Reform, I didn't think there was political room for a new party in British politics. But when he did that, as you've said, it absolutely blew the doors off what Reform is all about. And I think the British people could then see that all is not good with Reform UK. And it's that motivated me initially, in cooperation with Rupert, to set up a new party. And
which is now Advance UK.
Which is now Advance UK.
Now formally became, at the end of last year, formally a political party.
We're registered with the Electoral Commission in Great Britain. We've got just under 40,000 members, which makes us the 7th largest political party in the United Kingdom. And this is perhaps an unintended consequence of Rupert Lowe being thrown out. If he hadn't been thrown out the way he was, I wouldn't have launched Advance UK, most probably. And now, Reform, and we're not going anywhere, by the way. We can fight a general election with nearly 40,000 members, and we're going to fight the general election. So Reform now has, in my mind, a formidable political opponent rising up the ranks, which it wouldn't have if it had treated Rupert Lowe properly.
Yeah, because Dominic Frisby, the thing is, you can look at what happened to Rupert and say, well, was he maybe challenging the leadership too much? You could even make an argument, and it's not an argument I agree with, but you could probably make an argument to say that interview in the Daily Mail to Andrew Pearce was a declaration of war on the leadership just before the elections. You can make that argument. But what I have been completely unable to find, even amongst Reform's biggest and most prominent supporters, is any argument where you can justify, number one, spreading a false rumour about someone's health, which is that Rupert Lowe had dementia, and number two, reporting him to the police. That's the sort of red line that was crossed, in my view.
Yeah, I I don't know what went on behind the scenes at Reform, and I don't know what the thinking was behind what they did. And I am kind of with you guys. I think we would be better off if the right were all on the same team and not splintered. You know, this country's in such grave danger. I don't want to see a splintering like the left did. And what I like about Rupert and what I like about you, Ben, as well, is that you're both very successful businessmen and you both have FU money. And you're at the point in your lives where you don't need to pander anymore. You can just be truthful. And so you call it as you see it, and Rupert calls it as he sees it. Now, what Nigel has achieved in managing to survive his entire career without getting cancelled is, I mean, people have tried and tried to take him down for years. And it's quite miraculous that he's managed to survive as long as he has and still gets on Question Time and so on and so forth. And I think he's just got a nose for the media. And he's got a nose for how far he can go up to the line without crossing it and getting cancelled. So, and I imagine you're both going to tear me apart for what I say, but I think deep down, philosophically, Farage is probably very close to where you and Rupert are. But he can't be saying the things that certainly, you're a bit more moderate, Ben, and you're always very measured, but Rupert, says some pretty forthright things. Now, I happen to agree with a lot of what Rupert says, and I think the only remedies to get this country right are a lot of the things that Rupert says. And Nigel probably agrees. But because of the way the media is, if he were to go and say those things, he would be smeared, he would be misrepresented, and he would create a furore that would probably see him ending. So I just think what he's done...
It's clever and strategic?
Well, I think it's tactical was the word I was going to use.
The thing is, I understand that argument.
Yeah.
But what I don't understand the argument of is treating people to the right of Reform UK as if they are the enemy. And I would argue that in the last few weeks of 2025, we actually saw the clear illustration that the true enemy to Reform UK and Nigel Farage is the establishment, is the mainstream media, with this quite deranged campaign that's been run in regards to Farage's days at school.
Oh my goodness me, what next?
Yeah, but it's had real momentum because they want to do this. They want to cancel it. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, Nigel, I tried to tell you that, Rupert Lowe wasn't the real enemy. Ben Habib wasn't the real enemy. I wasn't the real enemy. We just wanted to get you to a strong position on the issues that really mattered, like mass deportations, for example. So I think the world is changing enough. That's the exciting thing. Nigel thinks he needs the mainstream media. Nigel still thinks he needs to be on the front page of the Daily Express. It's like, no one cares. It's a complete irrelevance. I mean, arguably, you could say the Mail, the Telegraph is still important, yes, but the game is truly changing.
It is, and the line where the line is changing.
Where the centre of gravity is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it might be, I've made the argument that this was a tactical thing. I've no doubt there was a bit of ego in there as well. He doesn't want to see others maybe getting the attention and so on. That might be a reason, I don't know.
I think it is, because otherwise, why would you not want Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe around you? Because you're talking about having to form a cabinet, and you've got a whole load of 20-year-old kids.
Well, you need heavyweights, and Ben, over Brexit and the arguments about the fishing and all the Northern Ireland thing. You were the most intellectual arguing for Brexit on all those issues that most people. I'm pretty good on finance and economics. I didn't understand them, and you were so articulate. And so, I just think they're missing a trick by not having people like you and Ben there. But I don't know the entire reasoning behind what he did.
Yeah.
But can I come back on this? I think I agree with the vast majority of what you said, including perhaps the strategic necessity to be careful with mainstream media. But, as Dan said, the country is in such a dire state now. It is vital one of the reasons I think we've had this constitutional turmoil that we've had is that we've had successive governments that have stood on platforms which they then haven't delivered. And it is therefore vital, if we're to save the country, that the next government, if it is to be reform, which I actually don't think it's a slam dunk at all.
Nor do I.
But if it is, whatever the party is that forms the next government, it's vital that it is honest, clear and transparent with the British people. Why? Because it must have the democratic mandate when it goes into office. It can't promise X and do Y because it won't have the mandate.
100%.
Well, that's
100%,
true. And
100%.
the other thing I would say is the way Starmer got elected was by not messing up in the 2 years leading up to the election.
And by lying.
By lying, but just like, don't say that, don't promise anything.
Yeah, but don't be honest about what we're going to do.
That's
And look at what's happened to his popularity.
That's
It's
precisely the point
disastrous
I'm making.
Which is why I actually don't want to see weak source Nigel say, "Oh, we're not really going to do anything," and that worries me because it's like, number one, you're either lying, and you're actually going to get in and be sound once you're in. Well, that's not good. You've got to be honest. Or number two, actually, he's not going to do any of the stuff which we need to save the country. But look, let's move on because at number 9, instead of raising the alarm on the Islamist terror threat on all of our doorsteps following the devastating Manchester synagogue attack, football pundit Gary Neville tore down a Union Jack flag, blaming patriotism and white middle-aged men. Aren't they awful, those white middle-aged men, for the division our country faces? Watch.
And I just kept thinking as I was driving home last night that we're all being turned on each other, and the division that's being created is absolutely disgusting. Mainly created by angry, middle-aged white men who know exactly what they're doing. Funnily enough, on one of my development sites last week, there was a Union Jack flag put up, and I took it down instantly.
I mean, Dominic, it's hilarious, isn't it? The division is never caused by the terrorists, is it? You know, never by the Islamists.
Well, I wasn't sure which T-shirt to wear tonight, and I've got
I like
my
that. What
government
is that?
star.
Government. Very bad. Would not recommend one star.
1 star. But
Is this one of yours?
Well, no, it's I get them from a website called Libertarian Hoodies.
Like it.
But the other one I was going to wear says "Truth is the new hate speech." And I think that really chimes in with that Gary.
Just show it to
Well
the
said.
camera because the mic's a little bit in the way. There we go.
You're absolutely
sorry.
truth is the new hate speech.
Truth is the new hate speech. I like that. You were wearing that at the 2CTV party,
I
weren't you?
was, yeah. Truth
I
is the new
liked
hate
it a lot.
speech. And when you utter the truth as you see it, and everybody's truth is different, but when you say the truth to someone to whom what you're saying is unpalatable, that becomes hate speech. And the left does this like man. You see Gary Neville's same difference. Doing it like mad there is people utter unpalatable truths, but that are very important to them, and to someone like Gary Neville, it is hate speech. He got roundly booed at Wembley that week, and good.
He did.
He's a great football pundit. I love listening to him talk about football with that Mancunian accent. I just love it. And now I know what his politics are. I can't stand him.
Yeah, I mean, he did. But what I do just find fascinating, I think we've always got to call this out, Ben Habib. If you replace white in that sentence with virtually any other word,
wouldn't be
you're
allowed.
immediately cancelled. You know, terrible Asian middle-aged men, terrible trans middle-aged men, terrible gay middle-aged men, terrible black middle-aged men. You're cancelled. You're finished. And I really feel like in 2026, the scourge of anti-white racism is something that we have to start calling out because it's becoming so widespread.
Absolutely. And the government has done such a good job of trashing our belief in the country that actually, if we talk about cancel culture for a second, they've managed to cancel our national flags. They've managed to make it fashionable and societally acceptable for people like Gary Neville, who've represented this country, to actually not realise that when they're taking down the Union, it's the Union flag, by the way, not the Union Jack, but I'll come back to that because it's an interesting difference. But when they're prepared to take down the Union flag, what they haven't tweaked in their heads is that they're cancelling. They're part of the problem of that's resulting in the cancellation of our country. There can be no basis on which our national flags can be divisive. They have only become divisive because the far left have weaponized nationalism against the nation state. And I know this for a fact, by the way, because if you go to the government website and you look up the definition of far-right terrorism, it talks about the need, the use of violence to perpetrate far-right ideologies, and it gives 3 examples of what far-right is, one of which is cultural nationalism. So if, and you know, you're not a country if you don't have a common culture, a settled culture amongst you. So if you believe in British culture, and if you believe in the nation state of the United Kingdom, under government advice, you're far-right. That is a hop and a skip away from cancelling your national flag, which is where we've got to.
It's insane.
It's insane. And the reason Gary Neville,
insane.
I just want to finish on this. The reason Gary Neville says the Union Jack, not the Union flag, is because the Union Jack is the name of the flag when you fly it on a British ship. And so imbued are we with the understanding that it's gone into our deep subconscious that rule Britannia was a thing, that we rule the seas from 1805 to 1916.
Which he hates.
He probably hates it. But he says Union Jack because of our culture, our heritage. That's what the Union flag became, the Union Jack, because of our supremacy across the seas. And I hope he continues to make that mistake, because he'll be subliminally reminding the British people of how great we once were.
I like that. I had never heard that take on that. So I very, very much like that. At number 8 in our countdown, the disgraced former Oxford Union president-elect George Aberoni celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk in a WhatsApp group and his public Instagram profile. Now, of course, this brought shame to this union, but it wasn't a surprise given Aberoni had a history with the Conservative activist, as Kirk had humiliated him during a debate before. But the snivelling woke student also endorsed political violence. Watch.
Why is it that men in countries that barely have toilets and do not have 2 pounds to rub together, but they do have kids and they do have a wife, are much happier than someone with a big flat in downtown London? Something to think about.
I mean, I think happiness is a difficult idea to conflate in that sense. I mean,
No,
there are other
suicide.
duties.
They're less likely to kill themselves. Forget all these happiness indexes. If you kill yourself, you're not happy, right? So these poor countries do not have male suicide problems. Why?
I do not know.
Think about it. Thank you very much.
To effectively create change in the world we desire. And Side Prop will argue that at times there is simply nothing else that can be required other than violent retaliation. And this is a view I wholeheartedly agree with. The view that some institutions are too broken, too aggressive, too oppressive to be reformed. Like cancers of our society, they must and they should be taken down by any means necessary.
Now, of course, Ben Habib, this dude, George Aberoni, is presenting himself as the victim now across mainstream media, you know, being given platforms on the likes of LBC. And while I don't want anyone cancelled for their speech, I mean, I wasn't calling on him to be arrested, I think it does show the true colours of the left, because what happened to Charlie Kirk was a seminal moment in our recent history. I mean, that's the sort of assassination that we will all remember in the same way that those who grew up in the 1960s remember the assassination of both JFK and RFK, because we saw it, right? We saw it. We literally saw him killed on a university campus. But I think it's also a seminal moment because we realize the left are happy about that. I mean, I wouldn't be happy about the assassination of any extreme figure on the left. I certainly would not be celebrating it in a public Instagram post or a private WhatsApp.
No, absolutely. And I mean, in that clip you just played, Aberoni was unashamedly advocating violence, justifying violence.
Yes.
And it's not just the left that's fallen. Oxford University has fallen. And the Oxford Union, which was founded in 1823, was the bastion of free speech. And it's been used for many aggressive debates, which may have ended up with people not necessarily liking each other, but it's never, as far as I'm aware, resulted in an advocation or perpetration of violence at the end of it. The whole point about debate and free speech, Dominic will know this much better than I do. The whole point about it is to obviate the need for violence, because you have a forum through which you can argue out your position. And then the point about democracy is allow that position, if it prevails with the majority, to become the way we're governed. And when you resort to violence, when that bullet, when the trigger was squeezed and that bullet was put into action, the entire force that opposed Charlie Kirk lost the argument. Aberoni lost the argument at that point. And the right position for Aberoni to have taken was actually, if he was a big enough man, was to say, look, I'm the prospective president of the Oxford Union. I believe in free speech. We lost the argument that day. This was a major setback to free speech, and free speech is the only peaceable way that change can be brought.
But he didn't say that, Dominic. I mean, this is not a smart guy. I mean, he said,
ABB.
Charlie Kirk got shot. Let's fucking go. Charlie Kirk got shot. Lol. So, I mean, that's the level of what we're dealing with. Not a smart guy, but I would argue an evil guy. And honestly, I do mean that because, as I say, if my worst enemy, I mean, let me think about it. Owen Jones, right? If he was shot and I saw a video like that, I would be horrified. I would be upset. I would be mortified. To me, that is a natural human reaction to seeing that type of political violence. And that's not how the left reacted. And this guy isn't an aberration. Aberoni isn't an aberration. There's hundreds of left-wingers who responded in this way.
Yeah, it's a symptom of the conflation of speech and actual physical violence. And the two have been conflated. And you see it in the law courts. Somebody put in jail for stuff they've posted online versus somebody who actually committed a physical crime and hurt somebody. And for somehow or other, the two have got conflated. One is just words. The other, you can actually destroy somebody's life with physical harm. And at the same time, and again, it's that back to that thing of truth is the new hate speech. And Charlie Kirk was just he was on a quest for the truth. He cleaved to the truth wherever he could, and that to some was hate speech, which is conflated with violence, and therefore violence is justified. And I think it's partly screens as well. You kind of get divorced from reality, spending too much time. But when you start calling somebody a Nazi, as the left will often do to anyone who's sort of, to the right of Jeremy Corbyn. And then if that person is a Nazi, well, then it is justifiable to use physical violence on them. But this has been going on, a long time, hurty words and seem to justify violence. They don't. They're just hurty words. And we're in a very bad place, and we've got some very set in people's mindsets that need altering, and I don't quite know how we do it.
2025 was the year that Meghan Markle thought she was going to finally put to rest all of this speculation in regards to her pregnancy. But when she released a video of herself, filmed apparently in hospital just before the birth of one of her children, dancing like a maniac, indeed, what happened is that lots of prominent commentators, including Megyn Kelly, said, actually, this does look like a moon bump to me. So it was a massive own goal. God forbid we do have to watch this video again.
When the song come on, let me see you get gone. Baby mama, this your song. Been pregnant for way too long. Let's tell the DJ turn it off.
If she a baby mama,
Go ahead.
she gon' do that baby mama.
Work.
She gon' put it on you. She gon' do that baby mama. Drop
Drop it down, drop it down, down low. Drop it down, drop it down, down low. Drop it down, drop it down, down low. Do the baby mama when I step out on the floor. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, oh. Hit the baby mama when I'm stepping through the door. Yeah, I'm pregnant, but I got an ill flow. Tryna make some money, buy some huggies from the store. S to the T-A, double R-K, to the E-I-S-H-A. And I don't play, doing my way. Preggo, but I'm still doing moves like Beyonce. Yeah, I said I'm pregnant, give the child support and pay my rent. Pay my rent, your opinion is irrelevant. Irrelevant, cause I'm a baby mama. I can do just what I wanna. Turn up.
If she a baby mama, she gon' do that baby mama.
Work.
She gon' put it on you. She gon' do that baby mama. Drop,
Drop it down, drop it down, down low.
drop, drop,
Drop it down, drop it down, down low.
drop,
Drop it down, drop it down, down low.
I'm just watching Ben Habib's face. Dominic Frisby, look, this was in Los Angeles, of course, because it was when she was pregnant with Lily, the second baby. There's a whole load of consternation about what actually went on with Archie. I was covering that birth. It was all very odd. And, you know, the official announcement was that she was in labour when, in fact, she was already back to Kensington Palace. They didn't use the Royal Hospital. They didn't use the Royal Doctors. So this video was clearly released to sort of say, hey, I was definitely pregnant. Here I was. But it was one of those massive own goals because, indeed, this moon bump theory, which people like me and Lady Colin Campbell have spoken about for a long time, all of a sudden went mainstream because you had Megyn Kelly and others talking about it.
What is moon bump theory?
Well, basically, it suggests that Megyn didn't actually give birth to these children and that she was wearing a prosthetic bump. And of course, lots of medical experts have come out looking at that video and saying it's just impossible for someone who's literally 9 months pregnant and about to give birth to dance in that way.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm speakers. I became a granddad about a month ago, and my daughter-in-law and my son, thank you, they both live with me. And, you know, in the last couple of weeks when it's due to drop, the mum is just so desperate to get the baby out. And, you know, Millie, my daughter-in-law, you know, there are all sorts of weird exercises that you're told to do, and probably whatever the name of whatever she was twerking. Is that twerk? I don't even know.
Twerking is when you wiggle your bottom.
Well, she was kind of wiggling her bum.
It's called a slut drop. And this was the baby mama dance, which was a bit of a trend.
Well, so maybe she was doing all of that to try and, you know, get the thing out. I will say this about her. She like I grew up in a theatrical family. I've just known so many women like that over the years. She just is an actress.
Yeah.
She's just a pure actress, and everything she does, like I actually thought she was dancing quite well. And I was surprised at how good a dancer even Harry was, assuming that was Harry. And
yes, it was. That was Harry. We can confirm that.
But I thought, I looked at that, and now I don't believe she goes to like whatever clubs that you would go to where people dance like that. But she's just like an actress. She just knows how to behave. You know, I want to be a princess, so I'll act being a princess for a while. And she knows. She probably watched some people dancing like that in videos, whatever, and was just able to copy it because actresses are really good at that. And then she craves attention, but ultimately everything is about attention, and that was just another example of that.
Yeah,
but she was dancing quite well.
I mean, Ben Habib, there's nothing regal about it, is there? Given this is a woman who retains the title, the Duchess of Sussex.
That was, I mean, apart from the fact that she was very flexible, and I was marvelling at it. I was thinking, my goodness, how can she? I can't do that, and I'm not pregnant. But the thing that strikes me is her lack of understanding and recognition of the role that she had or has in the royal family. And, you know, both of them have been on the record repeatedly saying they don't want to be living their lives through the lens of a camera and in a goldfish bowl and all of that. And then they take the camera into the most private of rooms where you're about to deliver your baby. Do you remember when Diana was delivering Harry or William? There was complete quiet. No one knew. Cameras couldn't get even anywhere near the hospital.
Sure, but we
let
didn't
alone
have
in the
mobile
room.
phones then.
What?
We didn't have mobile phones then.
But it was so private, and there's a dignity with privacy.
Yes.
And I certainly wouldn't, if I were pregnant, dance like, well, I can't. But I wouldn't bring cameras into my privacy.
I hear what you're saying, but once you realise she's an actress and all she wants is attention,
but
she wants the attention when it's on her terms. That's
total
just how she
juxtaposition in her positions. Because, Ben, remember, Meghan Markle refused to leave the Lindo wing. She didn't go and give birth at the Lindo wing, which is what most royals do. Because remember, you get that moment on the doorsteps when we see the heir to the throne for the first time. Remember, Charles and Diana left the Lindo wing, and then William and Catherine quite famously left the Lindo wing. Yeah. Yes. And she refused to do that because she said that would be an invasion of her privacy. But then she goes and releases that video.
Well, then, I agree. I'm not a Meghan Markle fan, and I don't defend her. And there's all sorts of inconsistencies and hypocrisies. But she's an actress. She's not the brightest cookie in the basket. There's no way Kate would do anything like that. But
no,
she's
thank
a
God.
princess.
Thank God. Well, look, at number 6, speaking of not very regal at all, but this moment actually, I think, signifies something potentially much more disturbing about the downfall of Prince Harry. Because it was the truly bizarre moment when a doorbell camera caught the, prince who remains in the line of succession on his own, knocking on a stranger's door with no security by himself in London. Apparently, we were told, looking for a friend. Now, the photo sparked speculation that the Duke may have been doing something more nefarious, but of course we don't know. What we certainly do know is that he doesn't seem to be a particularly happy man. This is what Alex Phillips had to say about it on Outspoken earlier this year.
Detail, at least 24 hours notice, saying this is the address, go and do a reconnaissance beforehand. Peter Blex is absolutely right on this. I know people with security details who have to follow this protocol every single day of the week. And so it does smack in the face of, I need security and I'm really scared, but only when I want it.
Yeah, I found the whole thing completely bizarre. And look, he does look wired. He looks wired. And it's very odd what's going on with Prince Harry. I don't think we can deny the fact that we are seeing some type of very public meltdown. Now, Dominic Frisby, this picture genuinely did cause concern though, right? Because what on earth is this dude who claims that he is so unsafe in London? Do you know he's having these huge arguments with his dad, and even today continues to campaign Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary, to be given security because he claims he is so unsafe in Sadiq Khan's London. Well, in some ways, I agree with that. We're all unsafe. It's not because you're a prince, right? We're all totally unsafe. I've been mugged twice. But he's wandering the streets, looking for a random house of some friends who have apparently moved out. This was weird. You've got to admit.
Well, yeah, I have to confess, this is the first time I've actually heard the story. I don't follow the news that closely, and I wasn't aware of it at the time. Yeah, it does look like he was a little bit off his face. And I know in my younger years, if I'd had a heavy night and found myself wandering around, I've often sort of walked up to strangers and asked for help, maybe once, I don't know, but and knocked on doors, and it does look like a bloke is slightly off his tits wandering around. But again, I sort of defend the inconsistency of that couple because I just don't think they're the brightest sparks.
But Ben Habib, obviously there is a serious point to Harry and security, right? Because the only reason that King Charles agreed to meet with him this year, and remember, William had warned his father and said that this was a mistake. But Charles agreed because you'll remember Harry this year lost his case against the Home Office in terms of us, the British taxpayer, funding his security, which is what he wants, with no questions asked anytime he arrives here, even though he is no longer a working royal. Well, Yvette Cooper obviously gets moved out of the Home Secretary brief and becomes Foreign Secretary literally a couple of weeks after Harry's meeting with King Charles. Harry starts a new lobbying campaign to the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who he assumes is going to, for some reason, be more open to providing him state-funded security. And all of a sudden, Harry has damaged his father again because Charles is so acutely aware that he cannot be in contact with his son if his son is going to continue a legal claim against his own government, right? It's messy.
It's bizarre. I mean, what he should do is get in a dinghy, come across the channel, and
Then he'll be fine.
Then he'll be looked after like a royal.
So true. So true.
No, it is bizarre. I mean, he needs a lot of growing. It's not just about being thick, is it? Though,
no,
Dominic?
it's being naive, and he's never had to do anything himself.
Well,
but
yeah.
they can pay for their own security.
Dominic,
It is that. It is.
And remember, he was warned of this. I mean, everyone at the time said there are going to be certain repercussions if you leave the British royal family, including, by the way, Charles and William and the late Queen Elizabeth II, who said, look, we're only going to be able to provide you security for a year because Charles personally funded it for that year-long transition period. And Harry knew that.
He's just a bit simple and he's been brainwashed by his wife, is my theory.
That's it. He's been brainwashed by his wife. I think he's a soul that's bereft.
Yeah.
And he's lost his anchor, which was his family and the royal, the royal connection that he had. And he's got this woman who's a complete performance artist, wanting every shilling that she can get out of her fame. And he's backing his wife. And actually, it's a very sad thing to see unfold.
Yeah, it's like he's married a wrong 'un.
He has.
Yeah. I do a song, they had wealth and fame or a manner of success. What more could they have wished for? They were prince and princess. All they had to do was smile and toe the line. Instead, Meghan and Harry just whinged and whined.
Oh my God,
and
brilliant.
So the Queen kicked them out of the royal family.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, that sums it up. Brilliant Dominic Frisby number. At number 5 in our countdown, we are nearly there. The worst moments of 2025. And this was the disgraceful and dishonest panorama edit of President Trump's speech that manipulated viewers into thinking he incited storming the Capitol on January the 6th. Of course, this only was revealed this year. Watch.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
And Ben Habib, I mean, the BBC remains in crisis. The mainstream media might not want to talk about this, but they have no director general. They have no head of news as a result of this. Donald Trump remains committed to suing them. And there's a huge arrogance from the chairman of the BBC who doesn't seem to think that they've done anything wrong.
I mean, they apologise and they say, well, sue us if you want to. We couldn't care less. And for me, this is the first smoking gun that we've got on the BBC. Yes. We've all known that they were anti-Brexit. They've been anti-anything that's pro-nation, pro-British, half-sensible approach to our energy policy. They're completely climate nutcase gone mad. All of that. We've known all of that. But this was a smoking gun from someone within the organisation who is responsible for their internal accountability. Michael Prescott, I think his name was. And he came out and he published this report. And when you see...
Well, it was leaked. It was leaked to the Daily Telegraph.
Sorry, yeah.
So they never formally ever wanted us to know this, Ben.
He wrote to the board.
Could just discuss it.
He wrote to the board, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, he wrote to the board. Sorry, forgive me. And it's come out in public. And thank goodness it's come out in public, because when you take that speech that President or Trump made just after he'd lost that last election, and you edit it the way that they've edited it, it is designed to cancel President Trump. It's designed entirely to discredit him. Mm-hmm. And what it has done...
Before the election as well? So you could argue it's electoral interference?
Electoral interference. And what they've done is absolutely reveal where they stand on the political spectrum. And that was Panorama, their showcase revelationary program.
Yeah.
And they need to be defunded, I'm afraid.
Well, they do. I mean, it's astonishing, of course, because Panorama is also the TV program that Prince William claims led to the death of his mother because of the completely dishonestly procured interview by Martin Bashir. Yet, because it's the BBC, these failures are just allowed to continue.
I know. It's really bad what they did. I can't emphasize how bad it is. And, the Trump inciting the violence on January the 6th became a huge part of the left-wing narrative. And we now know it was based on a fraud. And since the revelations, defenders of the BBC, I watched Alistair Campbell give a speech and he said, they made a mistake. No, that was not a mistake. That was fraud.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just one producer. That was a team.
No way.
That was a team of people did that. And Panorama is, documentaries like that are supposed to cleave for the truth. They're not supposed to be propaganda. And they are trusted. And, the left complain all the time about fake news on the right. They complain about it non-stop. And we have to, this whole thing, we have to trust the experts because of all the fake news on the media. Well, there is the expert, guilty of a major fraud. And I think it's really serious and really grave. And like you, I think the BBC should be voluntary. It should go to subscription only, and those that want it can have it. But it should not be forced down everyone's throats. Excuse me. I'm choking on my own words. I really am.
Ben, Habib, you come in.
And yeah, it shouldn't be forced down everyone's throats. And people need to realise it is lies, and leftist propaganda.
Yeah, 100%. No, I agree. I agree. Actually, couldn't agree more. At number 4 in our countdown of the worst of 2025, Mike Graham, the star presenter of Talk TV, the highest rated presenter of Talk TV, axed, sacked, gone from the mainstream media despite a decades-long career over a social media post the broadcaster deemed as racist. But remember, Mike claims to this day he never posted it and that his account was hacked. Now, Mike made his comeback in the independent media. He's doing incredibly well. Talk isn't. And he gave his first exclusive interview to Outspoken. Watch.
There were people in the building who didn't want me to go, whereas there were also people in the building who did, for all sorts of reasons, you know, and maybe not this one. So it sort of, it ceased becoming about the post in the end, and it more became about how are we going to get out of this with any kind of credibility at all. And it started to occur to me that they can't get out of it without getting rid of me, because if they bring me back, you know what's going to happen. They're going to be watching me like a hawk. They might say, you can't be quite as outrageous as you used to be. We have to clip your wings a little bit. We might make sure that you don't go banging on about migrants all the time.
Ben Habib, this is a really interesting one because, of course, you had your own run-in, I guess, with Talk ahead of the election. We've spoken about it before when Julia Hartley-Brewer, some would say, ambushed you and tried to make it look as if you were suggesting that people should die in the channel. And lots of people said that was an example of Talk TV engaging in cancel culture of people on the right. Now they're even cancelling their own presenters. Obviously, Mike Graham was the big one, but a few weeks ago, you also weighed in on the case of Lucy White, who had suggested that there shouldn't be non-British born MPs serving in our parliament. You said that even someone Pakistani born, that in your view she wasn't racist, and this was a fair enough discussion. But Talk TV came out publicly in The Guardian and said they found her comments reprehensible and they wouldn't be booking her again. So there seems to be, and the Mike Graham sacking, well, firstly, just tell me what you think about the Mike Graham thing, but then it does seem to feed into this bigger form of cancel culture happening on the right.
Yeah. The right has a propensity to cancel people. They're so fearful of being undermined by the left. And the right has somehow bought the narrative of the left and is dancing to its tune. I think you said earlier, Dominic, or was it you, Dan, saying that Nigel Farage doesn't need to be on the front pages of all these newspapers. The landscape has changed, but in the pursuit of acceptability, the right often throws its own, the so-called right, often throws its own under a bus. Because if we throw them under a bus, by definition, we're sanitized. And Farage does a lot of that. He's throwing people under the bus all the time. Just at the tail end of last year, he threw a brilliant councillor, Ian Cooper, under the bus on the basis of a report produced by Hope Not Hate.
Yes.
You know, which is...
Well, he does that quite a lot.
He does that a lot, and that's unacceptable. Ian's a great guy. I stand up for him. I stand up for Lucy. The country has got to such an awful place that the radical measures required to resolve the country's difficulties, to bring us back to a position of safety, are going to be found to be dramatic and perhaps unpalatable to some. And what Lucy was saying, which I've heard so many people say, it's basically a cry. It's a cry for help. Please, can someone make sure that, in Lucy's case, our representatives in Parliament actually care about the country? That's the point she was making. We want politicians in Parliament who recognise the existence of this country, who buy into this country, have a culture that's shared with us, and will do what's right for this country. That was the central point she was making. But instead of going and understanding that point, everyone wanted to pile in on Lucy. And they've done the same with Mike. Mike has a brilliant way of being in your face in order to make a point. Like you can grow concrete. I thought that was brilliant. He had an adolescent twit on against him. And he said, well, I'm not going to put up with any of that nonsense. And yeah, you can grow concrete. Mike should never have been removed from Talk. But I think there's another force at play here. Talk needs advertising revenue. GB News needs advertising revenue.
And are so woke.
And the ad... So, they're all woke. The advertisers are woke.
So much of it is about that. Yeah. Dominic, Frisby, what did you think? I mean, I felt personally this was obviously really weird for me because there were loads of parallels to the GB News situation. I was the top-rated presenter on GB News. Mike was the top-rated presenter on Talk. Even that wasn't enough to save us, which is in some ways quite extraordinary because you'd usually think these broadcasters would follow the ratings, but it's not enough.
Well, I think the psychological dynamic that Ben just described of this fear of the left on the right and fear of the left-wing press and fear of cancellation is basically what destroyed the Conservative Party.
Yes.
And it goes all the way back to their decision to elect David Cameron instead of David Davies, who was a proper Conservative. And they elected Cameron, and there was this, he's going to be our Tony Blair, launch to the middle. And that was the beginning of the end of the Conservative Party. So that's what happens, longer term when you make these kind of decisions. And I would also say this, is what I see is the dynamic of working for somebody else against working for yourself. Now, Mike is an outspoken guy, and, even if he doesn't say it on Talk TV, you probably know what he's going to think about certain issues most of the time. He's just going to be much more successful with his own platform, doing his own thing.
100%.
We're scared to go and do our own thing when we're youngsters on our career. We want the platform that is the BBC or GB News or Talk TV or whatever it is. But ultimately, you are beholden to somebody else and the whims of somebody else, and they make decisions. They don't care about you. If you benefit them, they'll carry on employing you, and if you become a problem, they'll get rid of you. And if the pain-gain equation doesn't work in your favour, you're toast. So, work for yourself, have your own platform, nobody else can cancel you.
Great advice. Great advice. Okay, we are into the top 3, the worst moments of 2025. And at number 3, tax cheat Angela Rayner, who tried to excuse paying the tax that her government expects us all to pay over her complex family situation, involving her departing husband and disabled son. The type of sympathy that, of course, you'd never receive from HMRC if you were an ordinary Brit. I think this was disgusting, but already, of course, by the end of the year, she was on the comeback trail.
Parents of a disabled child with a trust who divorce and seek different properties face a complex tax position. If there is one good thing, Mr. Speaker, that can come out of this, I hope that other families in the situation may now be aware of that and avoid getting into the position that I am now in. I am, of course, corresponding with the HMRC, and they have my full cooperation. There is no excuse not to pay taxes owed, and I will do so. This was an honestly made mistake, but when you make a mistake, you take responsibility. To serve at the highest level of government was a privilege, not for the title or the office, but for the chance to change the lives of the people I grew up with and live alongside. Every day, I work to serve those same working class communities. In every decision that I made, I thought of them.
Now, Dominic Frisby, you were very taken there by Angela Rayner's hands.
Well, this was something I once read a book all about body language a long time ago, and apparently if you're being investigated by the FBI, the reason they have tables with nothing underneath is so that they can see your feet. When you concentrate on your face when you're lying, but if your hands go or your feet go,
she was shaking like a leaf.
Her hands were going mad. I wrote a song about Angela Rayner, and the chorus of the song was "Maybe Karma Actually Exists," because she spent so many years in opposition. She actually said, "Tax dodgers cost lives." That was her line. And, resign, the slightest hint.
Yes.
And she fudged her council tax. Then she used her son's disabled NHS allowance to buy a second home, and then she bunked off her 40 grand's worth of stamp duty. You know, it was always some nuanced argument.
And it was never her fault.
Yeah, but
it was never her fault, Dominic.
But she knew, and she was just trying to get off tax. But what annoys me is not that she was trying to get off tax, is that the law is so patently stupid when even the minister is trying to get round it.
Oh, but they're never going to change
that. They never reform the law.
But they're never going to change that. They're never going to change that. And Ben Habib, seeing the different reaction from the Labour Party, which is moving to the hard left, to this tax cheat in Angela Rayner has been quite astonishing because, as Dominic says, if you're on the right and you're a tax cheat, you're demonised. You should be finished. You should be cancelled. But with Rayner, they wanted to come back. I mean, I still believe we could be looking at the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom there. I really believe that because it's either her or Ed Miliband at this rate.
She's not gone. She's
definitely not gone. And I think it also testifies to the very weak position Keir Starmer now has and Rachel Reeves.
He has to pretend he likes this woman.
He has to pretend it, even now, because he's got such division in his own party. And this is again...
And he hates her, by the way. Can we just be honest about that? He's always hated Rayner.
He?
Yeah, well, remember he tried to sack her and demote her, but he couldn't because she is the standard bearer for the left of the Labour Party.
And this is, they're suffering a lot of what they blame the Conservatives for, being a divided house, not having a unified political philosophy, not being able to command the majority that they have in Parliament. They have they had 175 seat majority last year. It's probably slightly down from that now, but they can't command their majority. And that means that they're going to play lowest common denominator politics, and everything is going to be a backroom deal, which means they will not be able to govern for the national interest, which takes me in turn to their inability, you'll remember this last year, to just cut 1.6% off the welfare bill. Because people like Angela Rayner will take them right down. They came to Parliament with a view to reduce it by 5 billion. They ended up spending more as a result of their welfare reforms than when they went in. And it's because of people like Angela Rayner.
Yeah, so he's not in control of his own government.
And just to finish the point, in order to pay these massive welfare bills, they're going to tax us. And she's dodging the taxes.
To record levels. No, it's extraordinary. It is extraordinary. You would laugh or
Stamp
cry.
duty is a terrible tax.
Terrible
It
tax.
is a tax on
It's
mobility.
evil.
It is awful.
And the wealth tax that they've brought in is going to be even worse.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And the
Well, they
fact
don't want
that it
us
is
owning
such a bad
anything,
tax.
do they? They do not want us owning anything. And this obviously feeds into a bigger globalist strategy at play. And indeed, at number 2 in our countdown, this is the runner-up for the worst moment of 2025. And it's Rachel Thieves or Rachel from Accounts or Rachel from Complaints, however you want to define this woman, who lied as Chancellor of the Exchequer, who I believe conducted fraud against the British people in the preparation of her budget. But the specific moment that makes our list is when she sobbed in Parliament, not over the fact that she has destroyed our economy, destroyed our tax system, but because her own job was on the line. Watch.
Of a Labour government, we've got free school meals, breakfast clubs, childcare, got £15 billion invested in transport in the North and the Midlands. We're cutting regulation, planning and infrastructure is pounding forward, building 1.5...
And Dominic Frisby, I think a lot of people actually forget that this moment with Rachel Reeves was because she was worried that she was going to be out of a job. It was all political. And then, of course, the markets reacted, and she's now tied to Starmer forever. These two go down together.
Yeah, you were saying about the Oxford Union guy playing the victim when it suited him.
George Aberoni.
George Aberoni. She does that. She complained about
mansplaining. This was all down to sexism.
Yeah. And, I just found when she lied on her CV, I just found that funny. Okay, because we've all exaggerated on a CV. But then the real crime was this lie about, the misrepresentation of the OBR report, the hushing up of that, so that she could put up taxes to keep the backbenchers happy. That was very dishonest because effectively she was lying to the bond markets. And, there's all sorts of implications to that. But the bottom line is this. We have someone who is the Chancellor of the Exchequer who is a serial liar.
100%.
I mean,
She is.
yeah.
I mean, Ben, she is. And she's lied about everything, by the way. I mean, she's lied about what she did in terms of her own housing arrangements. She's lied about her career history. I mean, she's even lied about being a chess champion.
But the
as a
biggest
teenager.
26th in a local tournament.
Yeah.
But the
she calls
worst
herself a
lie,
chess
the worst
champion.
lie was the one that you just mentioned.
It's terrible.
To make up to paint the national finances in a worse light than the already awful position they're in order to damage working class people. It's the working and middle class who get nailed every single time.
This fiscal drag.
The fiscal drag.
Like teachers now are paying higher rate income tax. Teachers.
Yeah, it's absurd. And pensioners are going to be dragged into it.
It's bad.
Yeah, it's awful. And she should be out on her ear. But again, it's this division in the party which has cemented them into position. And I know some people are hoping for an early election. It ain't going to happen. No. These people are going to be clawing on to power.
100%.
They're going to be clawing on to power, and they're not going to learn from the Conservative Party that changing the leadership doesn't change anything.
Well, they're going to have to do it.
All the same mistakes.
They are going to have to do it because you cannot leave a prime minister. I mean, I agree with what you're saying and the fundamentals that it will not save them. And I do think Labour are less inclined to change leaders. History proves that. Their system also makes it harder to do so. But you can't keep Starmer in power. You just can't.
No,
the guy is hated. He's not unpopular. He is hated.
Who actually likes him?
100%. And this leads us on to the worst moment of 2025. We are there in our countdown. And of course, it involves slippery Starmer. At number one, it was our Prime Minister's shameful lying to President Trump on 2 occasions over free speech in the UK. The bastard lied in front of not just President Trump's face, but J.D. Vance's face, claiming that we still have free speech in the Disunited Kingdom. Watch.
But we also know that there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British, of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them, but also affect American technology companies and by extension, American citizens. So that is something that we'll talk about today at lunch.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time. Well, no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of our history there.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time here, so we're very proud about that.
Yeah, we're not censoring anyone.
Ben Habib.
Well, of course we're censoring people. There are 12,000 arrests, if I can call them that, for non-crime hate incidents, which are basically challenging people on what they've said, down to as young as 9-year-old in the playground. And children grow up. And part of growing up is saying nasty things. Children grow up saying nasty things, but part of growing up is saying nasty things so you can establish in your own mind where you're at. But we are shutting down free speech. We are indoctrinating our children. We're requiring the population to take the knee to it. And of course, the cancellation of free speech goes hand in hand with the cancellation of people. That's how they do it. They cancel people, and then you toe the line on what they regard as acceptable doctrine. And we saw Bridget Phillipson at the tail end of last year introducing into children's syllabuses, I don't know if you saw this, the teaching of how to spot fake news.
Yes.
And the teaching of climate change. These are not settled, fake news, but that the whole point about fake news is you discover it yourself through debate, through free speech. And climate change is not a settled science. By no means is it a settled science. And yet they are going to put it into children's educational syllabuses. We don't have free speech in this country. We definitely don't. And people like me, speaking the way we do, you, all of us in this room, we are daily courting.
We're under threat.
We're under threat.
We are under threat.
Sometimes I just feel when I say what I think, I literally feel I'm guilty of heresy.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just feel like I'm this heretic and I'm like, but I watched those clips and I remember watching them when they came out. And I was like, how can he say that?
Well, remember the first time he said it, Lucy Connolly was literally still in jail.
I know. And I mean, maybe I'm naive, but I don't believe that somebody can lie as blatantly as that. So my theory on it is that he doesn't actually know what free speech is and what it means? Because a lot of people think there is free speech, but it's as long as you say the right things. But if you can't challenge, climate change orthodoxy or, the EU or whatever issue it is, multiculturalism, if you can't challenge these things, then there is no free speech. And you are not allowed to challenge these things. And the fact that for me thinking that most of them are BS and multiculturalism isn't necessarily a good thing and is actually failing. And I'm starting to become a believer in monoculturalism now, awful man that I am. But for me, thinking wanting to you have to have free speech in order to further your own ideas and cleave to the truth. You have to. And it's been discovered, it's been proven many times that for all the fake stuff there is on the internet, even now with AI and fake videos, human beings are actually remarkably good at deciphering between what is BS and what isn't BS. So I'm not as concerned as the left are about the proliferation of BS on the internet. I'm more concerned about the proliferation of BS in the institutions that are supposed to be honest.
100%. 100%.
Can I say one thing?
Please.
It's so interesting to me that in the top 10 that we've discussed today, free speech and cancellation culture has come up repeatedly.
How many times?
How many times? And if it's not at the forefront of the debate, it's lurking in the background. It's always lurking.
So true.
If you are to develop scientifically in any kind of way, you need to be able to say the unsayable. You need to have the freedom to say that. I notice it with comedy all the time. The hardest nights are new material nights because the joke doesn't quite work there. And comedy is all about going as close to the line as you can. And it's on new material nights that, maybe you're going to overstep the mark. And whenever I've got into trouble with audiences, it's always on new material nights when I haven't quite got the wording right. And that's when you're most in danger. But that's when you need a safe space.
Yes. Can I say one more thing, if I may say one more thing, because it's a testimony, goes partly back to the Oxford Union discussion we were having. In 1860, Thomas Huxley, you'll all know this, 1860, Thomas Huxley had a debate with Samuel Wilberforce, who was the son of Bishop Wilberforce, about evolution. Thomas Huxley made the case for Darwinian evolution, which stands directly in opposition to the church's understanding of how man was made. They had a convivial debate. They laughed and joked, and they went out and had supper afterwards. That was the state of free speech in 1860 in the United Kingdom. You try and do that today about some minority religious beliefs, and you will be arrested.
We've gone backwards.
We've gone backwards.
Really that is absolutely chilling.
And do you know what cancellation is? It's excommunication.
Yeah.
It's medieval excommunication. I used to think, what's the problem with being excommunicated? Well, you get cancelled, and then now you understand.
It's our modern day version. Well, what a conversation. What a countdown. Two of my favourite guests. Ben Habib is, of course, the leader of Advance UK, now officially a political party. We will be following very closely this year what happens with Advance UK. Dominic Frisby is, of course, comedian. He writes the investment Substack, The Flying Frisbee. And here is his book, The History of Gold.
The Secret
History of Gold. Myth, Money, Politics and Power. And I imagine that was a good Christmas present for many, Dom.
Oh, it was a lovely Christmas present, particularly a signed one.
It can be a good New Year present as well, though, can't it? No, this is a great book. This is a great book.
Thank you.
And of course, my previous interview with Dominic talking all about the book is still available on YouTube. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
I've
Sam.
really enjoyed this countdown, actually. There was a lot of bad to look back on in 2025, but sometimes we've had some fun along the way. I will be back with you, though, live on Monday with all of the latest news. That is when the Royal Uncancelled After Show returns as well. But of course, you can watch all of our normal Royal content right now over on Substack, the address www.outspoken.live. All of our regular features return on Monday, including Greatest Britain, Uni and Jackass, and the Worst Britain in the World this week. I hope you have had a wonderful first couple of days of 2026, and I look forward to seeing you live. We are back live, 5 p.m. UK time Monday, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. If you are watching on YouTube, just hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, then you'll get alerted to our new episodes. All we're now available as a podcast too. You can find us on Spotify as a video, Apple Podcasts, or actually wherever you get your podcasts. Please do just rate and review. Have an amazing weekend, and most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.